Ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow!
Okay, yeah, I saw the light was blinking. Okay, go ahead. We're not starting the show quite yet, but go ahead. We can get the conversation, at least lay the groundwork for the conversation. Basil, it's Senator Santorum, former Senator Rick Santorum, back with us via phone. Yeah, we're doing this is the Sunday morning show, obviously, and we tend to focus more on the religious aspects. And also, Basil well notes, Basil corrected me on that. We also focus on the philosophical aspects with Buddhism of things, all things going on in the world, particularly in terms of the political arena and the social arena. Okay, okay. Your point is well taken, but I don't, Basil. Senator Santorum is identifying that he really believes that this discussion about contraception really, in fact, is not really about contraception as much as it's about. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Senator Santorum. He says it's not really nearly as much about contraception as it is about government interference in our daily lives and in the lives of religion. Okay, Basil is his. Okay, there we go. He got a moment to think about that, former Senator Santorum, and his whiskers are twitching, and he's sort of bobbing his head a little bit now too. So that's interesting. That's a new one. Okay. Okay, yeah. He's saying that Basil's saying that we absolutely take exception with you on that. That as we had noted on previous shows, that in previous discussions, that in fact, okay, go ahead, Basil. That in fact, it really is a shame that organized religions, and we're talking for the most part about the Catholic Church. We're talking about the more right-wing Baptist and Baptist denominations. We're also talking about, to a fair extent, the Church of Jesus Christ, Latter-day Saints. And that's a good point, Basil. I think Senator Santorum, Basil wants to add in Islam, because Basil's saying that in fact those more fundamentalist, those more right-wing elements of Islam really line up pretty well with the right-wing, more fundamentalist United States Christian churches. That in fact fundamentalism, okay, Basil's saying fundamentalism is fundamentalism. What part of that don't you understand, Senator Santorum? Okay, Senator Santorum is saying that big churches, small churches, that's not the point. The point is organized religion needs to be able to follow its teachings. Now I'm going to speak for Basil here, Senator Santorum. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Santorum, apparently we've started the show. Good morning. Welcome to Basil BuddhaCat Presents. I'm David Stevenson. I'm Basil's co-host and interpreter. Along with us, of course, in center slot, Basil BuddhaCat. Hold one second, Senator Santorum. Center slot, Basil BuddhaCat. And we have a second visit from Fear. And Fear is going to have a rougher time on Sunday morning, obviously, I'm sure, than Fear had on Friday night. Fear was very reticent and, in fact, did not add anything into our discussion Friday night. But, we're going to get back, actually. We were in the middle of a conversation with former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum, And Senator Santorum's been criticized most notably by the other front-running candidate, Mitt Romney, about his voting for a lot of things in the Senate that run contradictory to Senator Santorum's avowed beliefs. And in fact, in the Republican debate in Arizona, in fact, he did a very good job strategically. So Senator Santorum, I'm not setting this on as a criticism, just as an observation. What's that, Basil? Basil wants to take up the baton on this one, so to speak. Okay, Basil's saying that former Governor Mitt Romney completely bamboozled and completely overwhelmed former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum in the Arizona debate, that he, rather than speaking about the incredible list of inconsistencies that are part of his own being, that's to say, former Governor Mitt Romney, he managed to make the whole debate about the inconsistencies in beliefs and actions of former Senator Rick Santorum. And did you note also, Basil, we talked about this yesterday, and you said that you really felt like the other two candidates in the debate that was held, Congressman Ron Paul, and even more so, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, really seemed to jump on the bandwagon with former Governor Romney with his strategy, and in fact not only allowed him to do it, but really jumped in with him on that, and really put former Senator Santorum in the corner, so to speak. Okay, yep. No, that's a new word, and I really you gotta go with terminology that the audience understands better, Basil. I would say that they all dogged Senator Santorum, but of course Basil is saying that they all catted Senator Santorum. And point being, we all know what we're talking about here. Senator Santorum, just something to add to that. He's saying, Senator Santorum is indicating that he's saying that he got his shots in too, that he really feels like, in retrospect, that it wasn't as much that the other three candidates ganged up on him as much as after the debate, the media, which he says, in fact, favors favors his opponent, former Governor Mitt Romney, because Mitt Romney has more of this. Mitt's got more dollars to spend. He's been spending incredible amounts of dollars, not only through his campaign, but also through his super PAC, to attack any and every candidate that seems to be moving up and ready to overtake him. Or in the case of, Senator Santorum, I think it's safe to say you had overtaken him. In fact, we're looking possibly to beat him in Michigan. Now, Michigan will have been held by the time we're on the air. But, go ahead. Okay. Yeah, Senator Santorum does want to emphasize the point that believes that the media is really, in fact, and he calls them, of course, mainstream media. Yep, of course, that's the term. Now, Senator Santorum, does mainstream media include a little media outlet known as Fox News? He's saying absolutely not. Oh, hold on. Basil's telling me, and he wants me to pass along, that Fox News is being the number one watched news outlet is, in fact, mainstream media. That just by dint of the fact that they're the most watched news media outlet. And in fact now, Basil wants to also note that not only Fox News outlet, but some little rags that the Fox News ownership owns. One being the New York Daily News, the other being the New York Post, the other being a little economic outlet known as the Wall Street Journal. That Fox is heard by more people, and by dint of that is mainstream media. And just because they have a different tack on the world than outlets like CNN and MSNBC, that in fact they're the big guy, and they need to recognize that and stop making out like they're the little guy. Okay, Senator Santorum, we're talking about fear, and of course we're talking about fear relevant to our Christianity, Basil's and mine. And now I understand that you consider yourself to be a devout Christian. Now Basil is, he's not telling you you're not a Christian. No, that's not true. He's not saying you're not a Christian. He's just saying that you need to get in line with the teachings of Jesus Christ. And you're really missing the boat on what Jesus stood for while he was alive, and what Christianity represents in churches that are more in line with what Basil says is Christianity. That's the Unitarian Church, the United Methodist Church, and not an arm of Christianity, so to speak, but the Quaker Church certainly. They speak more to what Christianity is all about than the churches that you seem to be more in line with. And okay, we'll come back to you and we'll discuss that a little bit more. Thanks. Okay, Senator Santorum had to go to another call for a Sunday morning talk show. But at any rate, so let's get back to the discussion of fear, Basil, and fear. And perhaps we can get some thoughts from fear on this fine Sunday morning. Fear is what seems to drive a lot of folks. It seems to drive folks on the right side of the equation, the right side of the political spectrum, a lot more than it drives folks on the left-hand side. And I think that was proven out and continues to be proven out by a little movement known as Occupy Wall Street, where folks actually, on a shift basis for the most part, because we're all working people as much as anyone else, but folks that are involved with Occupy Wall Street would come to a location and spend an afternoon, spend an evening, stay overnight one night, occasionally spend. A few folks are there on a regular basis, but for the most part, it's a shift job or a shift situation where people are standing up for what they believe in, standing up against big government to a degree, certainly, and noting that as being a problem insofar as it's become a pawn of large corporations. But folks with Occupy Wall Street seem to be up against probably a lot more resistance than the Tea Party was from local police forces, who, of course, and I think that's not true. I'm going to disagree with you on that, Basil. I think the police almost completely have been very respectful and very much respectful of the folks with Occupy Wall Street, with the kids, with the adults, and with everybody else involved with Occupy Wall Street. And sometimes there have been some misdeeds done by law enforcement, but in fact it's and we talked about this. Basil says, yep, and he's going to recite back my mantra about that, and he says it's become his mantra too. Is that in New York, for example, the regular police officers, the regular the duty officers wearing the blue shirts, the cops on the beat, so to speak, have been very, very, very good and very. The camaraderie between them and the folks of Occupy Wall Street, the individuals, has been great. But Basil says that he recognizes, and in what he's seen on television and what he's seen on the internet, and in conversations he's had with a lot of people across the political spectrum, he's noted that it's generally the officers that are lieutenant and on up, the ones that are wearing the white shirts and are more part of the corporate establishment of police, Basil says, have been the ones that have been heavy-handed with occupiers. Okay, yeah, but I think that's a truism, and perhaps we can get some. Will Fear weigh in on this? Fear, do you have something to add to the conversation? In a second. Yeah, microphone works. So, oh, the line's lit up again. Let's see what it is this time. Basil BuddhaCat presents. Oh, it's Rick Perry, former Texas Governor Rick Perry, and former presidential candidate for a short while. And at one point, he was one of the front-running candidates until he opened his mouth. Alrighty, I'll take that back. Okay, yeah. Although you did make some make very good very good use of the word "oops" during your campaign appearances. Okay, he's saying now, he's asking me, do I want to talk about about fear, or do I want to engage in rhetoric? And you're right, absolutely. Let's talk about fear, Governor Perry. Okay. He's saying that there's a lot to be fearful of. There's people streaming across our borders, coming to work in the United States illegally, and his folks in Texas, his constituents in Texas are afraid of them. They're afraid of folks that might slip across the border, that are members of Al-Qaeda, that may be other radical Islamist groups. That now, Governor Perry, you've got a fair Muslim population in Texas. It's maybe about 0.5% of your population. But have you had an opportunity to speak with any of them, or to visit? Okay, have you had a chance to go to? Okay. Yep. He's visited with them, he's had discussions with them, and everyone that he speaks with who is Muslim, okay, yep, he says he's comfortable with. But that doesn't mean that the next guy is not going to be dangerous. Okay, well, you can only judge people by the ones you know. I think it's safe to say, Governor Perry. But at any rate, what else do you think people should be afraid of? He's saying that people should be afraid of the deficit. Now, Governor Perry, not to beat a dead horse here. All right, Basil's correcting me, and not to over treat an issue or discussion point, but okay, yep. But the point we're getting to, the point I want to make to you, and I want you to comment on, Governor Perry, is former Governor George W. Bush, who became president, was president of the United States for 8 years. During his administration, his 8 years in office, and we think, Basil and I are pretty certain that the biggest two contributing factors to the deficit ballooning during the 8 years that George W. Bush was president, and in fact, he left office with a national debt double the size that it was when he took office in January of 2001. But at any rate, Basil and I are going to make the point that the two biggest contributors to the deficit and the growth in the deficit during former President George W. Bush's administration were Iraq, where we spent about $1 trillion, in which, of course, that amount continues to grow as we still have some presence there, if not direct military presence, and certainly Afghanistan is still an open issue. But the deficit was more principally fueled by the what are known as the Bush tax cuts, which were brought in as a temporary measure to Basil says he has no idea what they were brought in to do other than to make the wealthy wealthier. But they were brought in the words of former President George W. Bush, they were brought in to stimulate business and to create jobs and to and in fact they contributed more heavily to the deficit growing than anything else. Now, I think Basil's question is going to be, okay, yep. Basil says, yep, go ahead. Basil's question is, why in the world do we need to live under this sham of giving the wealthy money in order to create jobs? We saw this trickle down, quote unquote, trickle down work during the Reagan administration, where we gave more back to the wealthy. Now, we changed the tax codes during the Reagan administration somewhat, and in fact, lowered taxes briefly, and then during Reagan's 8 years, we ended up raising taxes 11 times. But the share of the tax, the brunt of tax, was shifted from the wealthy to to middle-class Americans, and that continued under the Bush tax cuts of 2001, which were not meant to be permanent, but the rallying cry amongst Republicans is to make them permanent, and that's Basil's feeling, and it's just Basil says it's a damned shame. Basil, it's Sunday morning. Basil says it's a darn shame. Okay, so at any rate, would you consider the possibility, Governor Perry, that perhaps we need to go back to the tax codes prior to President Bush, or prior to former President Ronald Reagan, or Basil says, why not go back to a Republican president who Basil admires greatly, Dwight Eisenhower, where the tax codes were built and structured so that the wealthiest Americans and large corporations had a tax rate of up to 90+%. And America seemed to hum along pretty well. I mean, we had a burgeoning middle class. People were buying homes. Everything seemed to be moving in the right direction, other than in something going on in the Senate with a senator named McCarthy. But at any rate, that's not directly related to President Eisenhower. But at any rate, so why couldn't we go back to those days and that tax rate and stimulate the middle class and pay down our deficit? And wouldn't America be stronger under those terms? Governor Perry says, dunno. Okay. Okay, hold on one second. We have to, the other line's lit up, and we'll see if we can get back to you before the end of the show. But we only have a couple more minutes, so we'll try to get back to you, Governor Perry. Okay? Basil BuddhaCat presents. Well, how about that? We don't have fear on, or at least the caller in claims we do not have the real fear on the show as a guest. This caller in is saying that he, in fact, is the real fear. Prove it. Prove it. What can you tell us, and what can I pass on to the audience and to Basil that will indicate beyond a doubt that you, in fact, are the real fear? Okay? Okay, the caller in is saying that he, fear, being this gigantic two-headed monster. Okay, you're alluding to the two points we've been talking about: the fear of big government on the right side of the political spectrum, mostly, and the fear of large corporations on the left side of the political spectrum, principally. That in fact, because you have two fears, you have two heads, that you're the real fear, and the fear that's over across the table from us can't hold a candle to you. Okay. That seems to be that's a fairly cogent explanation of this, of what the point you're trying to get at. Okay, hold on. Yes, Basil. Basil says, Basil's saying that he doesn't really care what Guy's fear is under. That Basil believes in hope. Basil believes that when we have hope in our hearts, when we seek to do great things, that fear holds no danger to us. When we do good things, when we take care of everyone, treat everyone fairly, when either as Christians or as Muslims or as Jews or any religion or any non-religion, in fact, Basil says that whenever goodness and hope are in your heart, that fear always strikes out. That sounds like a good name for a book and for a movie. Basil says he's had conversations with Jimmy Pearsall. Okay, fair enough. Okay, we're going to have to go now. Okay, we'll try you again next time. Okay, this has been Basil BuddhaCat Presents. I'm David Stevenson. In the center slot, we have Basil BuddhaCat. And Basil's saying that he's becoming much more comfortable with getting involved in the conversation. And true that, Basil, you got that. Okay, and someone claiming to be fear, or perhaps it is fear, has been our guest. Thanks. Enjoy your Sunday. Bye.
They say they'd rob your grandma blind on Wall Street, fritter her away her Medicare on Wall Street. And Pharma Oil and their pet fox don't care if she lives in a box, so long as they wear platinum jocks on Wall Street, Meow.